What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And this one wants to talk about Tesla SPY and the QQQ and break down the QQQ in a lot more detail and to talk about how it's really strongly connected to that of SPY and Tesla. Now, I know that sounds like crazy, but once you see the technicals and the charts, it's going to make a lot of sense because the QQQ also has a bullish divergence and a falling wedge that's developing on it as well. So I'm going to break down what this means for Tesla, why this is very significant, and what this all means for the markets going forward. But before I break anything down about all this information, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends very soon, it ends in just about 4 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, guys, looking at Tesla, right? Even if you are like a big bear on Tesla, you could still agree with my points because the bears will argue that maybe Tesla's forming like a head and shoulders. And if this is the left shoulder and this is a head, then they could argue that a right shoulder still has to form before it does come down. Just hypothetically, right? I'm not guaranteeing it, but I'm just saying just for another like perspective because it's very important to look at both the bearish and bullish perspectives. So that could be another possibility, but regardless of what anyone tries to say, I don't want to focus too much on that just yet. I want to focus on like the more medium term, even like the shorter term, and that's because Tesla has the wedge that's forming, the falling wedge, and also a bullish divergence. But it's not just Tesla, right? Tesla doesn't just move based off like SPY and the whole market. The QQQ and the NASDAQ, they play a very big role as well in having an impact on Tesla, while Tesla can impact them as well. So it's kind of like a vice versa type of like relationship. When looking at them, okay, you can see right here we have Tesla compared to the QQQ. You will notice that the QQQ was underperforming. They were both dropping together very similarly, right? And then what happened was they both bottomed at the same time. They pumped together, came down together, pumped together, came down similarly, except the Tesla was dropping a little bit harder. Then they came up together, dropped together, came up together, dropped together, came up together, and they dropped together. Very, very similar price action. And then what happens to the QQQ has a tendency of affecting Tesla, and Tesla tends to move very similarly to it. And this is very important because if we dissect the technicals of Tesla, I made a video about this earlier today, so go back to that video. You need to watch that first before you watch this one. But I was basically showing you guys that on SPY, just as a quick recap, we have this double, if not triple, confluence of indicators suggesting that we have some nice support. First off, we had this breakout from the cup and handle. This rectangle right here was the resistance, and now it's being tested as support. This blue line right here was another support. And then we also have this falling wedge that's developed. Now, if we get a break from the falling wedge, the green line could play out. That's the bullish case. We could come down a little bit more and then get the breakout, right? But that doesn't mean we're necessarily going to just break out forever. We could always reject off this resistance. But we could come down to fill the gap at 442, then bounce. That's the second possibility. And then the third possibility would be like us just maintaining this wedge like this. We continue to break down, but we need a really bad piece of news for that to happen. We need something really horrible to come out before we see the market tank like that. And that's looking a little bit less likely because, SPY has a triple or quadruple positive divergence that is developed on the RSI. The MACD and RSI are making higher lows, whereas the price is making lower lows. And I went into more details about this in my earlier video. You could see this as well. Tesla has the same thing. It's been making lower lows, MACD, RSI making higher lows, but then the QQQ happens to be doing the same thing as well. The QQQ, if you zoom out of it, this thing was continually making lower lows. We had the first lower low at around like 368.9. Then we made another low around 367. Then the next low came at about we technically made a lower low right here. I think this is like a flat, it's like a double bottom. But then we made another lower low at 364 basically. And despite that, the RSI went from 21 as the low to 23 as the low. So like right here, it came to about 30 as the low. So the RSI is making higher lows, MACD is making higher lows, price is making lower lows. This is another positive divergence on the QQQ. Notice that the QQQ has a triple bullish divergence. Tesla has the same thing, a triple bullish divergence, right? Which suggests a bounce could come. And then SPY has the same thing as well. How interesting is that, right? It's like they're all connected by the same algorithm. And then on top of this, remember how I showed you guys SPY has this falling wedge? There are three possibilities. Either it continues dropping off bad news, or it comes down to fill the gap and then it bounces, or it just bounces from here. Well, what if I told you that the QQQ has something very similar as well? Look at the QQQ. It also has a falling wedge. How interesting is that? And then with this falling wedge, it's been getting tighter and tighter, but I actually drew out this yellow trend line because it got tighter as time progressed. We're basically approaching this level right here. So if you zoom out of the charts and look like right here, there's a lot of chop in this area right here between 365 and 360. We have a lot of supports, and I believe it's going to bounce somewhere around here. I think it's very probable it will. So there are three possibilities for the QQQ, and this connects with both Tesla and SPY. The QQQ, it could come up like this and then continue sinking much lower like this until it eventually breaks down into like the low 360s and bounces. This is the more like bearish case before it gets some kind of bounce. All right. But then what's going to cause it to drop all the way down to 360? That's my question. What's going to cause another like 2% drop on it? What? I don't see the catalyst just yet, unless something really bad happens with the news, another bank collapses, then my opinion could change. But I'm not really seeing that just yet. I don't see that happening. So then, just like SPY, right? There's a possibility that this thing might just be getting ready to bounce immediately. This is looking a little bit more likely, like it's just getting ready for a rebound and it wants to make its way up to some imbalances back to like the 370s. And even if it, does bounce like that, it does not have to keep going and going and going forever. It could be a small bounce before it just like rejects again, makes a lower high, and then it ends up breaking down again, right? So that's like what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying it's going to like bounce forever and keep going. It could just be establishing like a lower high compared to before, but this would be a nice bounce still. It could run like another $5-6 to the upside, maybe up to $10, depending on how big the breakout is. If it's a bigger breakout, it could just keep going to much higher levels like this. That is another possibility before this thing rejects and comes back down, right? Hypothetically. And then another possibility would be just like SPY. This thing kind of like breaks down a little bit. Maybe SPY and Tesla come down to fill their gaps. The QQQ does not have a gap from what I was noticing down there. It already filled its gap. So it could break down to like 365. If that breaks, 363 could be a nice support because it has the wedge support right about there. And it's getting very close to the end of the wedge. So I could be seeing like 363 or so, maybe a little lower before this thing tries to bounce like this and forms an inverse head and shoulders, then it just starts taking off into the later days of this week before it rejects or something, right? Hypothetically, this is like the second possibility. And the technicals suggest that this is possible for the QQQ as well. Just looking at the support levels, looking at the bullish falling wedge, looking at the bullish divergence, the triple bullish divergence that has been developing, right? So the QQQ is telling the same thing as SPY and Tesla. They're all connected. It's so interesting to witness this, right? So they're suggesting a bounce is possible. It's more probable. Could we break down lower? It is a possibility too. But if that were to happen, it's like, you know, we had this confluence on SPY. There's a confluence. So with the confluence basically right there, it becomes less probable, less certain for other people out there. So with the confluence existing, it makes it much more difficult to be like a massive, massive bear. And it just seems more likely like there is a possibility of a base that could form. So I'm just going to be watching these levels carefully. I want to be as honest as possible when doing so. And is it possible for, SPY, Tesla, and all these things to like continue to remain in the wedge for an extended period of time before breaking? Yes, but that's going to depend on the news. Now, don't assume it's going to break out until we actually see it break. I just want to call that out. And secondly, the two more probable possibilities would be something like this on the QQQ because of the support that it's approaching and because of technical analysis and the bullish divergences, right? So this is connected with like SPY. These are the two more likely possibilities on SPY as well. The potential breaks. I think I deleted those, but you guys could see the same thing was connected on SPY. I drew this out not too long ago, basically establishing like a low here, then trying to like break out into the later days of this week. And then even if it does break out like this, it could just still get a big rejection This is all just hypothetical, but I'm just talking about this possibility, the more bullish one. Or we could do something a little different where we, see this thing fill the gap to 442 down here, and then we get some kind of bounce, forming an inverse head and shoulders, and then coming up like this before we get a rejection. Because the reason why I'm drawing it so violently is because we tend to get very violent breaks of falling wedges. So that's another possibility. And then the second one would be this one, and then the third one would be like, us continuing to sink down if some bad news comes out before any sort of like bounce. This is all just hypothetical, not guaranteeing anything, right? I can't promise exactly what's going to happen with the news and stuff, but I can tell you that this is very probable and very likely. And I find this one less likely, and these two up here, the more probable ones. And then for Tesla, right, it's all connected. It's all so similar. That's the very interesting thing, right? We have the other possibilities for Tesla. These are the two more probable ones. And then a drop to 230 is also possible if we have bad news, but I'm not leaning in that direction unless something happens. And with that said, it's all connected. It's all very similar based off technical analysis. These divergences, support and resistance levels are confluences and other things like that. All right, so I want to make this video kind of quick. Hopefully this was very helpful for a lot of people who are trying to look at the QQQ. Hopefully this was helpful, and I want the best for everyone. So enjoy the weekend, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Tesla in the market to the moon as the long term is very bright, and peace out.